All began on a rainy Thursday evening in New York City. Emily was late for her shift at the small bookstore she worked at, and as she dashed through the puddles, she collided with someone, sending both of them sprawling onto the wet sidewalk. When she looked up, drenched and flustered, she saw him, Jacob. The same Jacob who had been her best friend in high school, her first love, and the one person she had never been able to forget. "Emily?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly as if he couldn't believe his eyes. "Jacob?" she whispered, her heart pounding. She hadn't seen him in nearly 10 years, yet the memories came rushing back. The late-night talks, the stolen glances, the awkward hand-holding that always felt like magic. What made this encounter even more unbelievable was that neither of them had planned it. Life had pulled them in opposite directions. Jacob had moved to California for college, and Emily had stayed in New York, working tirelessly to support her younger brother after their parents had passed away. Both had tried to move on, but as they stood there in the rain, it was as if time had frozen, and the love they thought had ended was still very much alive. Before they could say more, Emily remembered the real reason she was late. She had promised herself she would make it to her book signing event, a dream she had been chasing for years. But as she looked at Jacob, her carefully constructed plans felt trivial. Over the next few weeks, Jacob and Emily reconnected. They shared coffee at the tiny café she had always loved, laughed at old memories, and slowly, the walls they had built around their hearts began to crumble. But just when it felt like life was finally giving them a second chance, reality struck. Jacob was engaged. He had built a life in California, complete with a fiancé, a career, and a future he had planned meticulously. Emily, on the other hand, was still navigating the challenges of life, her bookstore barely making ends meet, her brother struggling in college, and her own fears of never finding stability. They were worlds apart. Despite this, they couldn't ignore the undeniable connection between them. Every text, every call, every stolen moment was charged with a mix of longing and guilt. Jacob would come to New York on weekends, and they would walk the streets at night, reminiscing about what could have been. Emily knew she couldn't hold on to him forever, but letting go felt impossible. Then one evening, as they sat on the Brooklyn Bridge watching the sunset, Jacob turned to Emily, his eyes filled with emotion. "I can't do this anymore," he confessed. "I realized something over these past few weeks. Life without you feels empty. I thought I had moved on, but the truth is I've never stopped loving you." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. She had imagined this moment countless times, but now that it was happening, it felt both terrifying and exhilarating. "Jacob, I've loved you all this time," she admitted, her voice breaking. "Even when I tried to move on, even when I told myself it was over, my heart never lied. It wasn't easy." Jacob had to break off his engagement, face the questions from friends and family, and rebuild a life that aligned with his heart. Emily had to confront her fears of being hurt again, of taking a leap into the unknown. But through every challenge they realized something vital. True love doesn't fade. It doesn't vanish with time or distance. It waits patiently until the right moment brings it back. Months later, Emily and Jacob opened a small café bookstore together in New York, a dream they had shared in high school but never dared to pursue. They spent their days surrounded by books, coffee, and laughter, building a life that felt like home. Their love wasn't perfect. It came with its own set of challenges, but it was theirs and it was real. One rainy evening, much like the day they met again, Jacob held Emily's hand as they stood outside their cafe. "I used to think our story ended 10 years ago," he said softly. "But maybe it was never meant to end. Maybe it was just waiting for us to find our way back." Emily smiled, leaning into him. "Some loves," she whispered, "aren't meant to end. They're meant to last forever, no matter what."